World's Worst Children. Charlie the Chucker. World's worst children don't come any naughtier than Charlie Chung. Charlie was a little boy who loved chucking snowballs. He was delighted when the freezing cold winter arrived, and the first flakes of snow fell from the sky. Then he would race outside to catch the tiny white flecks in his hands, before squishing them, squashing them, and then squishing them all together to make one big snowball. Next, Charlie would look down to his palm with glee. It was time to make some mischief. He would snigger, "Now, I must tell you, and this is important, Charlie was not one of those children who loved snowball fights. In a snowball fight, there was far too great a risk of him being hit by a snowball. This was something Charlie hated. Shards of ice trickling down his neck made him howl, even though it was exactly what Charlie loved doing to others. This boy needed his snowball fights to be completely one-sided. He had to chuck all of the snowballs, and just that, Charlie loved to plan surprise attacks. He would hide behind a wall, or up a tree, or even under a bench. Then he would wait until his victim was near, and then chuck! Charlie would chuck his snowballs at anyone and anything. His little sister Gemma, an old lady walking with her dog, a squirrel perched on the branch of a tree, his piano teacher passing by on her bicycle, his little sister Gemma, again. "Stop it, it's not funny." "It's funny to me." The postman, next door's cat, one of Gemma's precious dolls, a bird flying high in the sky, even a poor postbox that was just standing perfectly still, minding its own business. Of course, Charlie had to hit his poor little sister with a snowball one more time. "Ouch, Charlie, that was my bottom. How would you like it if I chucked a snowball at your bottom?" "You never will." "I will get you back." "Until then, have another one." Like many naughty children, Charlie wanted more, more, more. For him, that meant more mayhem. It was all well and good, lobbing the snowballs one at a time, but this wasn't enough for little Charlie. How could he throw 2 snowballs at once? Charlie was right-handed, but he practiced throwing with his left hand too. Soon, he could chuck a snowball from each hand at the same time. This meant double trouble. He could hit 2 targets at once, Gemma and her favourite doll. However, the 2 snowballs at a time still wasn't enough for Charlie, so he did something rather unusual. He practiced gripping snowballs with his feet. Yes, his feet. Soon, he'd learned to lie on his back and chuck with both his hands and his feet at the same time. This our Charlie did one afternoon in the garden of his family home. He lay in wait in the snow for his sister and her 3 best friends to come home from school. This would be a new first for Charlie. Quadruple trouble. The boy lay on the ground, hiding behind a bush. When he spied the girls entering through the garden gate, he chucked all 4 snowballs at once. The 3 girls had come over for tea after school to play with Gemma's huge collection of dolls. Now they fled in fear. As Gemma stamped her foot in fury at her naughty brother, Charlie did what he always did. He smirked and sniggered. Even though chucking 4 snowballs at once was quite an achievement, it wasn't enough for him. He wanted to throw more snowballs at the same time, more than anyone had ever done in the history of snowballs. The boy decided he wanted to achieve the impossible. He wanted to throw 100 snowballs all at once, and his target would be every single person at his school. Charlie hated going to school and getting in trouble, time and time again, for throwing snowballs at everyone, including his teachers. Yes, he really was that naughty. Now he wanted to splat a snowball in the face of his head teacher, all the other teachers, and each and every pupil, all at once. Like all humans, Charlie didn't have enough hands or feet to throw 100 snowballs at the same time. So Charlie soon realized he had to invent something to make his dreams come true. He began thinking up a contraption to become the greatest snowball thrower in the history of the world. The day our story begins. Charlie began sketching what his device may look like. He stayed up all night, and by the next morning, he'd created his masterpiece. Charlie called it the Super Chucker. The Super Chucker looked like a little medieval catapult, a wooden frame, a tiny bath to contain a counterweight, 100 hands holding 100 snowballs, a giant arm, some rope, some springs, and of course, some wheels to move it around. The theory was that as soon as the counterweight in the tiny bucket was released, every one of these 100 hands would chuck the snowballs. Now came the tricky part. Charlie had to build this beast. But where would a 10-year-old find all of the stuff he needed? First, he borrowed all the wood for the contraption's frame from his father's garden shed. Charlie was 100% sure his father would say no if he asked him to destroy his shed so he could use the timber. So he just didn't ask him. Perfect. Instead, Charlie chopped up the shed. Next, he fixed the planks of wood together to build the frame for his Super Chucker. Then, he borrowed the wheels from his little sister's roller skates and fixed them to the bottom of the contraption. Once again, it was better not to ask, so he didn't. It made life so much simpler. Next, Charlie needed some rope. So he borrowed his mother's washing line with all of his father's underwear still attached. After that, Charlie spotted his little sister's toy slinky. This would be the perfect spring for his Super Chucker. Gemma was about to let it down from the top of the stairs when her big brother appeared at the bottom. "I just need your slinky," he announced, as he bounded up the stairs and grabbed it from the end. "Get off, Charlie!" yelled Gemma. "Just let it go!" shouted Charlie, bounding back down the stairs with one end of the slinky in his hand. "It's my slinky!" she cried. "Give this slinky to me!" "Or what?" "Or I will yank it out of your hands!" he shouted. "You will have to yank it because I'm not letting it go," she fibbed. Gemma had every intention of letting go. She just had to pick the right moment when the slinky was fully stretched. Then it would cause the mightiest sting. "I will pull that slinky out of your hands," yelled Charlie. "Go on then." 3, 2, 1. As soon as Charlie yanked hard, Gemma let go. The slinky shot back. It whacked Charlie bang on the nose. "Ah! What was that for?" moaned Charlie. "I thought you wanted my slinky, Charlie." "I did, but never mind." "Tee-hee-hee-hee," chuckled Gemma. Charlie sniggered to himself. Only he knew what monkey business he was up to. Now there was one final part he needed to make this Super Chucker. The 100 hands. But where on earth would he find them? Charlie only had 2 hands, and he was rather attached to them. This seemed like the hardest part of all. Then, Charlie had a thought. A dark thought. A wicked thought. A thought so bad, it made Charlie one of the world's worst children of all time. His little sister's doll collection. Gemma was the proud owner of 50 pretty dolls. She kept them all in pride and place on the shelves in her bedroom. So while Gemma was sleeping soundly that night, Charlie tiptoed into her bedroom. One by one, he snatched all of his sister's dolls before piling them up in his own room. And once safely inside, Charlie locked the door and took out a sharp pair of scissors. Now this was not for the faint-hearted, but Charlie did something so horrid, I almost dare not to tell you. Almost. Yes, you guessed it. Charlie snipped off the hands of all 50 dolls. Soon the wicked boy had 100 little plastic hands. Next, he rushed outside with his haul to the snow. It was time to attach the hands to the super chucker. Once he had done that, Charlie stepped back to admire his genius creation. Looking at it, he realized he'd forgotten one last rather important thing: the counterweight. Charlie needed to put this in place before loading the super chucker with the snowballs. Once the counterweight was removed, it would release the spring and chuck all the snowballs. Charlie scurried around the garden, looking for something heavy enough to work. A flower pot? No. A dustbin? No. A bird bath? No. Charlie glanced up at his sister's window. The boy was sure he'd seen the curtains twitch. But it was still. Maybe he had imagined it. Then a thought struck him like a lightning bolt. Yes! Gemma herself would be the perfect counterweight. So Charlie tiptoed upstairs and slowly opened her bedroom door. The girl was snoring loudly. Charlie thought this was a little strange, as he had never, ever heard his sister snore before. No matter. Charlie hoisted Gemma over his shoulders to carry her down the stairs. Then he placed her in the tiny tin bath. Now that he had the perfect counterweight, Charlie was ready to roll. Thank goodness she hasn't woken up, he hissed to himself, absolutely amazed. Gemma carried on snoring loudly, standing upright in the bath. Charlie scooped up a handful of freshly powdered snow from the ground on the garden. Then he loaded each plastic hand with a snowball. Soon, he had his haul of 100 snowballs. Next, Charlie wheeled his super chucker all the way to school, making sure he arrived super early. Once Charlie had passed through the school gates, he crossed the empty playground and hid himself and his evil invention behind the bicycle shed. Soon, the playground began to fill with pupils and teachers arriving for their day at school. Once it was full, Charlie put on a very deep grown-up's voice and shouted, "This is the school inspector speaking. Please could everybody, pupils and teachers, gather in the center of the playground for a special announcement." To Charlie's astonishment, everybody did just that. Well, they weren't naughty like him, he thought. They were all about to get snowballed. Craftily, Gemma opened one eye. It was clear by the twinkle in it that she had been awake all this time. The girl was up to something. She was waiting for the perfect moment to strike. As soon as her brother looked in her direction, she shut her eye and went back to snoring. Charlie wheeled her and his super chucker into the playground. The 100 people stood still, open-mouthed in shock. What on earth was this bizarre thing? Bits of an old shed? A washing line with underwear on it? A slinky? A snoring girl in her pajamas standing up in a tin bath? And weirdest of all, 100 plastic hands, each holding a snowball. While they all stood there gawping, Charlie put his super chucker in place. All the teachers and pupils were now in range of the snowballs. All he had to do was released to counterweight. Then the giant arm would spring forward, and every single person, pupil, and teacher would be snowballed. All at the same time. But Gemma had other ideas. She opened both eyes now and shouted to the crowd, "Run! Run! Snowballs incoming!" Ran they did. "Gemma, are you awake?" barked a furious Charlie. "Aren't you clever?" purred Gemma. "What are you doing?" he demanded. "I'm getting my own back for what you did to my beautiful dolls." But... No buts, Charlie. Now it's time for you to taste your own medicine, she said. Charlie tried to run away, but without thinking, he ran straight into the line of fire. Gemma leapt off the super chucker. The slinky sprang shut, and the 100 snowballs were launched into the air. Charlie looked back aghast as 100 snowballs sped towards him. The snowballs hit him all at once. "Ah!" he cried. Not that anyone could hear him, as he was now trapped inside a giant snowball. Everybody laughed, no one harder than Gemma. Charlie was fuming. He hated being hit by snowballs. And now he was trapped inside one. He was frozen in a giant snowball. The boy tried and tried and tried to wiggle free, but all he did was cause the giant snowball to roll. And it did just that. It picked up all of the snow on the playground. It got bigger and bigger and bigger. Now, Gemma may have found her brother extremely annoying, but she didn't want him to be trapped inside a giant snowball forever. "Let's get him out," she cried. So the maze of people in the playground chased after the snowball. They ran ahead of it and pushed it back, but instead of stopping, the snowball rolled and rolled and rolled in the opposite direction. As it did so, it picked up more and more and more snow, getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. It was now so large, bigger than a hot air balloon. Charlie's worst nightmare had come true. To make matters worse, the giant snowball was now heading straight for the super chucker. Gemma leapt out of the way. The giant snowball smashed straight into the super chucker. Both broke into 100 pieces, and Charlie landed on the playground. He was frozen solid like a giant ice lolly. At last, Charlie the chucker had got his comeuppance. Everybody laughed at him. Charlie was placed by the radiator, and he took until the end of the school day to thaw out. Now Gemma was not going to let her brother forget this in a hurry, of course. To make amends, she forced him to rebuild the shed, hang up the washing line, wash and iron all of her father's underwear, repair the roller skates, and buy her a new slinky. And most importantly, glue each and every hand back into her collection of dolls. After that, Gemma made Charlie make a solemn promise. "I promise to never ever throw a snowball again," he announced. "Thank you, Charlie," she replied. "Now if you'll excuse me, I must pop out to the shops to buy a massive bag of water balloons." "No!" she cried. He sniggered. Well, what did you expect? Charlie wasn't one of the world's worst children for nothing. The end.